I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Noongar people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land we are meeting on today. So today for the user group we've got Ed Vassie, who was the original developer behind SQL Server FineBuild, and it's now become a bigger team. And otherwise I'll let him introduce himself. So Ed, if you'd like to start off.
Hi, yes, I'm Ed Vassie. I originally got the idea for SQL FineBuild after I left a job with a company called CLS. We'd had a lot of pressure from management to have a completely scripted SQL Server install, and one of the contractors there, a guy called Mark Allison, who at that time was an MVP, put something together, and after I left the company I decided I'd try and generalise it and publish it. And so back in 2008, SQL FineBuild came on the scene. It's changed a lot since then, and so we'll go through what FineBuild can do, how you can use it, and also have a look at some of these changes. So the presentation today is going to be in two sections, an introduction to FineBuild, and then we'll look at how we can actually use it. Also, I should say thank you very much for inviting me to present to you today. It's a great honour to be able to do so. So let's have a look. Overview of FineBuild. The idea of FineBuild is that it will give you a single click to install SQL Server, going from a completely vanilla Windows instance to a fully configured SQL Server. It covers all OSs from, as it says there, from Windows XP through to Windows 2016 cluster, and all SQL versions through to SQL 2016. One of the features of FineBuild is it's not just a SQL installer. It will include a lot of other stuff as well. From going from a vanilla Windows instance, very often you need to install stuff like .NET. There's various fixes that might be needed for particular versions of Windows. All of these things get installed by FineBuild. All you have to do is to put the install media into a specific folder, and FineBuild will go and find it. As it says, it will then install SQL Server, it will then put on service packs and CUs if they can't be included within the build itself. There's some community tools that it will install. Some of these, I must admit, are looking a bit dated now, and there's going to be a big refresh of this in version 4 of FineBuild, which Brian Davis in the States is working on. So my last release of FineBuild is going to be version 3.3, which is due out whenever I can get the cluster build testing finished. Okay, the other final thing that FineBuild does is a lot of configuration of SQL Server. So it will do some initial setup of SQL Server memory, set some accounts to own databases. It does things that, by and large, some of the experts out there saying are things that are best practice to do. You very often see lists of best practice things to do with SQL Server, or FineBuild will do most of them for you. As I said at the beginning, it was first released in 2008. FineBuild is written mainly using some DOS scripting to kick the thing off, and then VB script to actually do the work. There is a bit of PowerShell in it, and PowerShell is going to feature a great deal more in the work that Brian is doing in the States. Since it was released, it's gone through a number of updates. With version 2, I had a different code base for every SQL Server version that it supported. That's all been merged into a single code base and has really helped make the product more flexible. And at the moment, version 3.3 is in beta, and I'm hoping very much to get a stable release out there will be a stable release coming within SQL 2016 is launched, and I hope that will include everything to do with clustering. But at the moment, I'm having a bit of problems with testing on Windows 2003 and 2008. Some of this old stuff gets a bit finicky. Okay, again, to reinforce the concept that we start with a vanilla Windows and end with configured SQL Server. And what FineBuild does internally is controlled by a series of parameters which you can supply at runtime. Most of these parameters have default values taken from a config file, but your runtime parameters will override the defaults. We'll have a look at this a little bit more in the section about how to do large-scale deployments with FineBuild. And the other main thing about FineBuild, it's not a black box. There's nothing hidden, there's nothing compiled that you can't see. Everything that FineBuild does, as I say, is either in DOS scripts, VB scripts, or PowerShell. And you may not be an expert in writing some of this stuff, but hey, anybody can read VB script if they can install SQL and be a DBA, you can read VB script. And also you've got a configuration report which tells you what it's done, and as we'll see in a little while, you've got a parameter which is called report only, which will give you that report before SQL FineBuild will install anything on your system. So that will help you find out what it is you're going to get done. FineBuild has got a load of documentation. There's over 250 pages on the FineBuild wiki. All of that is up on Codeplex. Most of what's not in the wiki is in the reference manual, but I must admit there are a few more recently added things that have not yet got properly documented. So as soon as version 3.3 is out there, my next job is to get the documentation updated. So you've got lots of stuff in the wiki. Google can find it all. So if you want to find something to do with FineBuild, just add the word FineBuild to your Google search. So FineBuild parameters will find you information about, as you might guess, the SQL parameters. If you want to do a cluster install, FineBuild cluster will take you to pages that tell you a bit more about that. An important thing is how to set up your install media. I'm saying that if you are installing things like .NET, various KB fixes and so on, these need to be in a specific folder. Google FineBuild install media to find out what you need and where to put it. And when you are looking at wiki pages that tell you what FineBuild is doing, so taking an example, if you are using analysis services, there is a very widely used add-on called MDX Studio that FineBuild installs. If you have a look at that page on the FineBuild wiki, it will tell you, yay, FineBuild installs it. In the top half of the page and the bottom half of the page, it will take you step by step through the process that you would have to install if you did that work yourself, and covers everything that FineBuild does in that install process. So sometimes there is some post-install configuration that has to be done, and in almost all cases FineBuild will do that for you. So, how to get started with FineBuild? It's quite a big tool. It can do a lot, which can make it seem quite complicated. It certainly has a lot of options, but I would suggest to get started with it, do something simple. If you can get yourself a Hyper-V guest, try a workstation build. That's a very simple build with minimum setup. Using all of the defaults. You will then see what FineBuild looks like while it's running. You'll be able to have a look at the configuration report, compare that with what you've got installed, and start making some decisions about what you want to do from then on. If you've got Windows 10, then you've got your own Hyper-V guest environment. So it's not that difficult to do a simple build. If you're stuck in a corporate environment with Windows support people who need a few months' notice to do things like build guests, then if you get hold of a guest that has not had anything installed on it, get a snapshot taken in Hyper-V, or if you're using VMware, there's VMware snapshotting. Then you can run your install and then revert back to the snapshot. So there are ways to start to get to know this product without making a permanent mark on your corporate infrastructure. When you want to go further, plan what you want to do, read the wiki, and explore some of the parameters that FineBuild has. So, for example, the mail server parameter. If you put that in, then FineBuild can create your DB mail profile for you. It has a few defaults it will use. If you want to have a specific email address to send any alerts to, then there's another parameter that covers the email address alerts. Otherwise, it will use an address based on a user ID used. So you'll use an address based on one of the install accounts. I can't remember which one. Again, another thing to look at, the RS exec account. So if you want to configure the report services unattended execution account, very often you need to do this after you've installed report services. Supply that with FineBuild and it will do that for you. So it will leave report services already configured for you. Another aspect of FineBuild is that it does not use administration accounts, or it does not use local administration authority anywhere apart from the account that is running the install process. So it tries to use best practice on security. So all of the service accounts it sets up are given the various Windows rights that they need to have without being part of the local administrators group. It has the concept of allowing you to specify a DBA group for your database administration work. And again, it will assume that that group will not need local administrator rights. So things, again, go back to report services. Normally you need local admin to do administration on that. FineBuild configures your DBA group as a report services administrator, so you don't need local admin. So once you have decided what it is that you want to do, run the build. If you're not completely certain about what it is you want to get out of it, use the report only parameter. That will show you the configuration report after FineBuild has done all of its validation. And you can then see whether you are asking for all of the things that you would like to see in your final build. At that stage, the only mark that FineBuild has made to your server is to create a folder and put in the FineBuild log file and FineBuild report file. So if you decide not to proceed, then just delete that folder. It's not a big deal. Preparing the install media. I'll show you some pages on the wiki in a little while that explain this, but you do need to set your install media into specific folders. I tend to create a network share which has got all of this stuff on it. Most installations, most corporate installations will have a repository of software install media. So what you need to do for SQL Server and FineBuild can fit into that quite well. And so you can have all of your SQL install media loaded into that, ready for running. The other thing you need to do is to prepare the installed files. You can run FineBuild direct from the command prompt and enter all of the parameters you want at runtime. Being able to remember all of those parameters for the next time you run is difficult. So my recommendation is put your parameters into file and then run that. And we'll look at that a bit more again in the large-scale rollout, which is what we're going to look at next. So, if you want repeatable and consistent builds, then FineBuild can do that for you. Most installations have a number of SQL Server roles. You might, thinking about place where I used to work, Total Jobs, one of the UK's largest online job boards. We had a role of scale-out read-only servers, which serviced our web estate. We had a role of peer-to-peer host servers, and we had a role for BI servers. These three roles had different requirements for the build. They needed different editions of SQL Server, various things like that. And we did all of this using FineBuild. We set up a parameter file containing the key information for each role, and then we had a file for each server so that we knew that if we wanted to build server X, we would just click on the file with server X in its name. And the end result would be SQL installed on that box. I would say for large-scale deployments, there's a number of ways you can tackle this. Some people take the view that they will change the FineBuild config file and put in the site-specific values instead of the FineBuild defaults. I've tried this a lot, and personally I would say don't do that, because it means every time you upgrade FineBuild, you need to change the config file, because each version of FineBuild will have new items in the config file. It gets quite tricky to merge all that lot together. If you use parameter files in the way I've been talking about, then those can remain the same. It would be possible to take a parameter file that was used for the original version of SQL FineBuild released back in 2008 and run that on the latest version 3.3 of FineBuild, and everything would work. You would not need to change that parameter file at all. For mandatory changes, you might want to make some optional changes to improve, to allow FineBuild to do a bit more validation. But the parameter files can stay very stable. And we'll have a look at some examples of that in a minute. And the great thing about parameter files is that you can put these into source control. So if you use TFS or any other source control mechanism, once you're using files to control what FineBuild does, then you're good to go with source control. So let's have a look at some examples of large-scale deployment, and let's see if this link to the wiki works. I tried this out last night and Codeplex was down. I was worried it might stay down. But this morning it looks like it's up, so let's see what happens when I click on this. So, a wiki page from FineBuild. It talks about a bit of what we've just done, able to deploy standardized builds. The process that I've tended to use has a hierarchy of files. Site level default values, and underneath those we would have files describing each of the server roles, and then finally we would have a file for each server. So let's have a look at the site level default values as an example. So these might be some site level defaults. One of the things that you can see here is a bit of relative folder addressing to get you to the FineBuild folder. That can be a little tricky to work out, but once you've worked it out, it does allow you to have a separate folder with all of your local files in it, and then connect through to the downloaded FineBuild folders without you having to make any changes to FineBuild itself. So we can see we've got the name of a group for which will be used for SA access within SQL Server. A lot of organisations encourage DBAs to have two accounts, one which will give them SA access and one which will have non-SA access but have a load of privileges that allow them to do maybe 80–90% of their workload. FineBuild supports that and will set up some privileges for you. You see here a mail server parameter, and then we've got this thing called a management server. Best thing to do is to look in the wiki for that, but a management server role is sort of partially coded within FineBuild and will install a lot of extra tools for you automatically. Then some of the accounts. But notice one thing, if you've got files with accounts, you're likely to have files with passwords. So if you do put all of these parameter files into a folder, then you need to be quite strict on who can actually access that folder. Maybe think of encryption or other things to keep these accounts private. Also, very much consider using managed service accounts or group managed service accounts when you install SQL Server. I've found that they work very well for everything from SQL 2012 onwards. The only gotcha with them is, like all group managed service accounts, they are based on the AD computer object, not the AD user object. So the account length is limited to 15 characters or less. And if you're using a group MSA with SQL 2012 or SQL 2014, the last character of the account must include the $sign, and that must be within the 15 character limit. If you do that, then SQL and Windows are perfectly happy with them. I've used them, they're in production on some sites or in various places, including with clusters. They work fine. So we've looked at site level defaults. Let's look at some server roles. So, I've called this role the workhorse server. This is going to be a fairly big beastie. It's got stuff installed on various disks all over the place. You've got multiple, it's showing here, you've got multiple drive letters for for installing data files for your databases. You're putting your file stream stuff on a particular file on a particular disk, set with full text stuff. You're putting your temp DB on another drive. So you can specify a whole host of different drives to put stuff on. We'll look at a more simple role in the future, in the next few pages, where most of these drive parameters are not given. FineBuild will default a lot of this stuff for you. The other thing that you see at the bottom is decided that would like a buffer pool extension file. So if you run this file and you are installing SQL 2014 or above, you will get a BPE file. If you run this on SQL 2012 or below, you won't get any errors, but you won't also get a BPE file. So, for your workhorse server, I've chosen in this example to put all of the account names in a separate file for the server. So let's say we wanted to install SQL Server on a server called PDGB01 SQL S0020. These could be the accounts and passwords needed for that particular box. As you can see, we've got things like an SA password. SQL FineBuild will enforce the fact that you supply an SA password even if you're just doing Windows authentication. This gives a greater level of protection in those cases where you might at some point change it from Windows to mixed mode. You will have an SA password on there. And for this particular server, we want it to act as a distributor for SQL Server replication. So FineBuild can create your distributor database and do other configuration needed. So let's look at a more lightweight server. The first thing you see is a lot less drive parameters. We're just specifying the data stuff on one drive, log files on another. So all of your data, in this case whether it is analysis services data or SQL Server databases, will head to drive E, and all of your log files will head to drive F. Your backup files will default to the same drive as the data files. And if you want to understand how all these defaults work, then FineBuild Wiki can tell you. Let's just see if I can find it. Let's see if, oops, I missed that. So, well, let's come to a parameter page, not the one I was hoping for originally, but here we are. So this tells you all of the drive parameters and where they default. So there's a whole cascade of defaults. And if you don't specify any drive parameters, then everything gets installed on your system drive. So for your lightweight server role, Again, there's various account parameters supplied. And you can create files for each of your servers. Within FineBuild version 3, there's a few extra things coming in which will help with this. You've always had a parameter called server, but it didn't really do anything in particular. With FineBuild version 3.3, FineBuild will validate that the server name given in the server parameter is the one that you're actually running FineBuild on. So this gives you an extra way of making sure that you are installing the right build on the right box. FineBuild version 3 also allows you to specify an edition parameter, and that will help in auto-discovery of the right install media for your edition. So by adding those two parameters, you can make sure even more that you're getting the right build that you wanted. So let's have a look at management server role. I mentioned that this is sort of included within FineBuild, so that if you nominate a particular server as a management server, it will automatically default to installing all of those items. Obviously, if you're installing an old version of SQL, you don't get all of that stuff. With SQL 2016, you can add Polybase and R analytics to that list. One of the things that FineBuild doesn't do, because I've never got around to do it, is master target job management is not included, still not included within FineBuild. That's something I think that Brian Davis hopes to add into it. But that doesn't mean that means that you can quite easily configure all of that afterwards. So, is there anything else of value up here? It just shows that in the site level defaults, I think we nominated this particular server to be the management server, and that would just be the parameters needed to install them there. Most organisations have quite a few people developing stuff, and those people would like to have their own instance of SQL Server. And there's various ways of tackling this. Some people would perhaps do a master build that includes Windows and all the components, and then effectively clone that. But if you wanted to give people laptops or kit that have just got Windows on them where they install everything themselves, then you can also give them access to a FineBuild file, set up FineBuild file for your site, which will give you a standardized developer build of SQL Server. So this will sort of will install SQL Server by telling it that you want to do a workstation type build. Then you'll automatically get all of the SQL Server tools included with that. It can be one way of tackling things. Another role, which I really recommend that sites use, is the administration server role. I've found that a lot of organisations sort of are fairly evenly split down the middle of having the concept that if you want to do any administration on a particular SQL Server box, you log on to that box, you have all of the tools you need on that box, and you do all of the work you want to do for that SQL Server on that box. The other viewpoint is that if you want to do some work on a particular SQL Server box, you always log on to a separate administration server, and that will have on it all of your client tools. You will then use things like Management Studio to connect remotely to the SQL box that you want to do your work on. And so you would almost never log on locally to a SQL Server box. This can be a difficult concept for people to get hold of when they start down that road, but ultimately it means that you get an administration server which can be tool rich. It is a server that can safely be crashed if things do cause it to crash. Running client tools always has a higher risk. Running a desktop on a server means that server is inherently at a higher risk of being crashed than if you are not logged onto it. So putting your administration risk onto a separate server to your production box does help in risk management. It can also help in security in that your SQL Server boxes, by box I mean virtual instance just as much as physical boxes, they can have far greater security put around them. They can be completely isolated from the internet as one example, whereas your administration server, you may want to be able to log on to via internet access. Again, certainly at Total Jobs Group, where I used to work, all of our SQL boxes were very well isolated from external access, and the administration server, it was hidden behind what we called a bastion server, but it was inherently more accessible from the outside world than the SQL boxes were. I mean, there will always be times when you need to log on to a SQL box for some types of troubleshooting, but for 99% of the time or even more, there should be no real need to actually log on to a SQL box once you've finished the install. You can install on server core just as easily as you can on a desktop version of SQL Server. If you install on server core, there are a few things that are automatically turned off within FineBuild, mainly because server core cannot support some of the SQL Server components. The main one which will worry most people is that SSRS cannot be installed on Windows Server Core. According to some people I've asked in Microsoft, is that they do feel there is some sort of dependency. Personally, when I've forced that through myself, I've not found any functionality in report services that doesn't work on server core. But I'm not going to make that happen in FineBuild. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Actually, while we're here, are there any questions about large-scale deployment at the moment?
Nope.
No, I'm not. Okay, thanks very much. Let's go back to the presentation. There's not much more in this. Some advanced features. We've talked about installing on clusters. Understand from Cody that not many people do a SQL Server cluster install, but if you did, then that is supported. FineBuild doesn't include any special support for availability groups. By and large, to install availability groups, you do a standard SQL Server install on each node of the Windows cluster that forms your high availability environment. So rather than doing a SQL cluster install, it's a normal install. Then after that, you need to set up the various availability groups you need. To do patching of SQL Server, one of the files you get when you download FineBuild is a file called SQL FineFix, and that runs the portion of FineBuild that applies service packs and CUs. It will also update your SQL native client if you've downloaded the update for that. If we ever get updates for books online, then it will also include that. Another bit, I'd have a look through the parameter inventory for swag. That you'd probably be quite surprised at what you can include within your build with FineBuild. You can, for instance, include a load of Windows and mixed mode logins if you wanted to. They will just be defined as logins within SQL Server. They won't be assigned any rights, but if you want to get a basket of logins included within SQL Server when you build it, that's one of the things you can do. There's all sorts of useful, hopefully useful things that you can have within FineBuild. And then some things that can be problems. So, all software can have a problem. There can be problems in your environment sometimes which will kill FineBuild partway through. I've tried very hard to search for and detect environmental issues at a very early stage within FineBuild and highlight those before any work is done. The configuration report would show you various error messages if anything nasty was found, but there will be some things that have slipped through. If FineBuild fails partway through, there's a troubleshooting section in the wiki. If you Google FineBuild troubleshooting, you'll find it. Gives you some hints and tips on how to go about troubleshooting. And if you then want to restart your build, if you just rerun with the same set of parameters as you did originally, FineBuild will detect that it is partway through an install and automatically restart at the point of failure. Every single step within FineBuild has got what is called a process ID, and the process ID at the time of failure will be shown. It will be shown. So if you decide you want to skip over that particular step, then just increment the process ID. The process ID is a mixed number and letter string, so if it says it's failed at process 2CG, and you decide that you actually wanted to skip over that, and put in a parameter restart /restart : 2CH. So to skip over a process, look at the last letter of the process ID and use the next highest letter in the alphabet, and that will cause it to skip over the process that failed. You may decide to say it's an environmental thing, you fix the environmental problem, and you wanted to rerun that entire step, just rerun it. There are a very, very few occasions where there is a timing problem. FineBuild sometimes works a bit too fast for slow servers. and sometimes you'll find that the problem will just go away when you simply rerun FineBuild. That is, most of the time I have tried to slow FineBuild down to avoid timing issues, but sometimes they come. If you want to install master data services, Microsoft, in their wisdom, have not provided any means of scripting master data services configuration. So although FineBuild can quite happily include the normal feature parameter to get the base MDS components included in your SQL build, it cannot then do any of the post-install configuration that you see on the Microsoft site. If the more you get into master data services, the more you'll find that what Microsoft describe as the post-install configuration is only the start of what you need to do. If Microsoft had allowed the MDS configuration tool to have a scriptable interface, then an awful lot more could have been done. But this is my personal biggest disappointment. MDS is a really nasty beast to configure, and I can't do anything with it. The final thing, as said before, be careful with passwords. You will need to look after the folder where you keep all your parameter files that have passwords in. While FineBuild is running, all of your passwords are held in clear text within one of the files on the server that FineBuild is running on. If FineBuild completes successfully, all of those passwords will be replaced by asterisks. If it doesn't complete successfully, all of those passwords will remain there in clear text. So if you restart FineBuild and continue to completion, then you can be assured that all of your passwords and your PID, your product key for SQL Server, one or two other sensitive items will be replaced by asterisks. But if you abandon the build, it's best to go back and delete the FineBuild logs folder. Then you make sure you're not leaving any passwords around. So that is the presentation. Any questions? Anything else people want to know?
Does anyone have anything specific they want to ask? Okay, I've got a big list then. So, hi Ed. So I've put together a couple questions. So when you start off the FineBuild process, would you always be running it from the server that you're installing SQL onto, or can you run it remotely with PSExec or something like that?
Okay, you really need to be logged on to the server. You probably can run it via PSExec. I've never tried that myself, but it needs to be invoked from the server that you want to do the install on.
And does it handle its own reboots and continue after you log back in?
Okay, with FineBuild 3.2 and below, it will schedule a reboot, and it will set up the once registry key needed to restart FineBuild, but you have to manually log back on it.
Okay.
With FineBuild 3.3 going on from that, if you include the admin password parameter and supply the password that you're using to log on with, then FineBuild will automatically log on.
Okay. You'd mentioned that if it fails at a step, then you can rerun it and it picks up from where it left off. How does that actually work?
Yeah.
Does it keep its like a progress in a file, or does it just start from the beginning and it just somehow works? Or can you talk a bit about that?
Okay, yeah. So when FineBuild starts up, you will see it will create a folder to keep some of its information in. That folder will always be in program files on your system drive. It will be, so it'll be program files, Microsoft SQL Server, FineBuild logs. And within FineBuild logs, initially you will find 3 files. The first is the FineBuild log file, which gives you a blow-by-blow account of what it's doing. If you want to find out more details of what FineBuild is doing, then at runtime you can add a parameter /debug : yes, and you get more information in the log file. The other one you'll find is an XML file where FineBuild keeps its state information. So one of the things it keeps in there is the currently active process ID. And FineBuild, when it starts up, will check to see, do I have a valid process ID in that file? And if I do, then I'll automatically restart at that point. You can override that with a /restart parameter, which can specify any restart point, or even if you say /restart no, it will start from the beginning again. Until FineBuild has actually moved on from dealing with the initial analysis of parameters and building the initial configuration report, it will always restart at the beginning. It's only once it moves on to what it calls the server preparation step that you get restart partway through the system. So the final file, as I've just sort of alluded to, is the configuration report, which tells you all of the parameters that you can include in SQL FineBuild and whether you turn them on or off, or whether they're not available for the particular type of build that you're running. And as FineBuild goes through, it will update the status for those parameters to tell you whether that's complete or bypassed. For some versions of Windows, it might even tell you have to configure that item manually. But normally you'll see either complete or bypassed. Might all see that it configured. That's another option. So then as FineBuild runs, wherever it is possible for it to capture logs of install activity, it will put those install logs into that folder as well. Okay, next question.
With the SQL FineFix command that you mentioned, is there any special smarts in that, or is it doesn't download any patches for you? Do you still have to put them into the directories, and how does it work out? Like between the service packs and CUs and security patches, is there any special logic there, or does it just run everything?
Oh, okay, yeah. You have to do the downloads yourself. It will never look on the internet. There's nothing within FineBuild that will look on the internet, and wherever FineBuild tells you to download stuff, it's always telling you to download the offline installers rather than the online installers, because there's lots of corporate sites that will not let a SQL box get any visibility onto the internet. So yes, you have to download everything, you put them into the relevant folders. There is something in the FineBuild wiki about downloading service packs and cumulative updates. The key parameters within FineBuild that control this is the SP level parameter /SP level, which controls the service pack level that will be searched for and included within the build. And for SQL 2008 R2 and below, then the SPCU level parameter is also important. With 2012 and above, because of the way Microsoft has changed the way they handle the inclusion of CUs, FineBuild will include within its build process, either for the initial build or for the fine fix, any of the CUs that you downloaded to the service pack folder. So if you wanted to include CUs 1, 2 and 3, but not 4, 5 and 6, then as we know all CUs are cumulative, you just download and put CU3 into the service pack folder. And that's what will get installed. If you're on SQL 2008 R2 and below, then the SPCU parameter is important because FineBuild knows which files relate to which CUs. That's included within the FineBuild config file, and it will just install the relevant CU that you specified.
If you didn't specify any for those, will it pick up the latest one that you've got for 2008 R2 and below?
The default values for SP level and CU level for all versions are the latest available SPs and CUs at the time that FineBuild was released. So, so for 2008 R2 and below, we have already got to the end of servicing on that. So that is unlikely to change. Although, actually, Microsoft have released a security update for, I think, SQL 2008 R2, and I have configured that within SQL FineBuild as another CU, because effectively that's what it is. The way Microsoft do their servicing for security updates is they include the latest build level with that update. So if we look at SQL 2005, there's been 2 security updates issued since end of servicing, and those both have their CU IDs within FineBuild. And if you look at the wiki documentation for SQL 2005 and service packs, it will explain that a bit more.
Just going over the parameter files that you've got, so do I have this right, that you have a parameter file for each computer, and that refers to a role, and both parameter files and the role files are batch files, but the role will also refer to a type, and the type is something internal into FineBuild?
Right, yeah, let's have a quick look at this. I think I have got some files from the place I work at now. Okay, yes. So, as these are in Dropbox, I've got rid of all of the sensitive information. So, I currently work a day a week for a charity called Tier Fund, and this is what we are using within Tier Fund to install SQL Server. So, I have high-level site defaults, so one for production, one for development, one for acceptance test. So, within the production file, we have, this is actually set up for FineBuild version 3. This is something that will be useful for FineBuild version 3 and is going to get more documentation. This will allow you to default to a particular version of SQL but override it. So, your production build here using group MSA, so no passwords needed for most things. In the real file there would be passwords just to Also, I have changed the domain names away from what TierFund actually used and the account names away from TierFund actually used, but otherwise those parameters are what TierFund have for their production site level defaults, and that then again has this in relative folder addressing to get to FineBuild. So let's just get this up as an example. So if we ignore this stuff that says screenshots and so on, you could lay out your network share for SQL Server install to cover those folders plus another one. Okay, so that would be, those highlighted folders would be the ones that you might have on your network share. So your FineBuild scripts has the indirect addressing with, let's open this one again, keep that open. Then we have a role, which is actually a cluster role. So we then, within the role file, this is a production cluster role, so I then call the production default file. So that will then include the production parameters in with the role parameters when that's run, and then we have a file for a given server. So this would be to install SQL FineBuild on that server, and this at the lower level has the list of things that we want to do on that particular server. And then again, you see this then calls the server file calls the role file calls the site level defaults, and the site level defaults call FineBuild. And it works, it's a bit messy in some ways, but it gives you a fairly clear breakdown of what is where. And I'm not, I've not included all of the files for time filled in that, but that is basically what is done.
And with the type parameter that you've got in your role, in this example for prod, you've got it to full. Are those other types just like another set of default parameters that you can override, or does it have some other meaning?
Oh, cool. Yes, they are they bring in a set of defaults that you can override. So there's three types: full, client, and workstation. So if you have a type of client, then it will install the client tools, but all of the database engine components, analysis services and report services will default to no. With FineBuild 3.3, those parameters will actually be set to not available within FineBuild. For workstation, you will get all of the client tools, and you will get all of the database engine components. It will install everything. With the full build, you will get the database engine components, but by default, you will not get any of the client tools. If you wanted the client tools on a full build, you can then set these /SQL tools parameter to yes, then that will include the client tools. So then it would be in many ways the same as a workstation build. I can't remember whether there are any other items that make a workstation build and a full build separate. But it's mainly that Workstation includes the client tools and the full build doesn't.
Okay, and
Which seems a strange naming system, but that's inherited from version 1.0 of FineBuild.
okay. So say later on you need to add a component to one of these servers, like you've set it up as a server build without any tools, and then later on you're going to add tools back to it. Is that something? How do you approach dealing with that? Do you just install it manually and then go back and edit your FineBuild configuration in source control so that you can rebuild the server properly later, or do you trigger it off through FineBuild itself somehow?
Okay, let's look at two particular scenarios. The one you've mentioned where you want to add client tools to a server build where you didn't have any tools on it. I would suggest you take advantage of the different build types and just run a client build on that server. And then that will make sure that FineBuild is not trying to install any database engine type components, but just do the tools. And then, yes, update your control file for that server within your source control system, so that next time you build, you get whatever you want. The other scenario is you've built the server, everything is fine, you decided that you did not want to have the Java DBC ODBC driver installed, and now you do. The two choices are you either install it manually and update the FineBuild file for next time, or you run your standard FineBuild build, but you add in a couple of extra parameters. Those would be /restart and /stop@. So the /restart parameter, you'd first of all have to do a little bit of digging within FineBuild. You can find out fairly easily from the wiki which of the main components of FineBuild does the install of your Java driver, and that will also tell you the process ID that is used, but that process ID was the one that was valid for when that wiki page was published, and certainly when the latest version of FineBuild is published, most of those process IDs will be slightly wrong. So when you know which component it is, you then go and open that file up in Notepad and you search for the thing that you want to install. Every install item has got its own process ID. You'll then find that Java, I don't know, it's something like 4SB or something like that. I don't know what process ID is. But you find it's called 4SB or whatever, so you then run FineBuild, say /restart :4SB /stop@ :4SB. So FineBuild will then do its normal pre-build validation. It will then automatically skip to process 4, which is install extra components. And within that, it will then do its normal processing for restart. So it will then jump down to process ID 4SB. It will run process 4SB, and then it will find, yes, I've got a stop@ value, and that stop@ value, oh, it's me, I'll stop now. And it stops. So if you don't include a stop@ parameter when you want to just do a single component install, it will then try and run all the way through to the end of the normal FineBuild process.
Okay. With Azure virtual machines, the ones which are just like normal machines, have you had any reports of people running this on there? Does it work? Are there any gotchas?
Okay, I've not personally installed on Azure virtual machines, but Total Jobs is 100% AWS virtual machines. And we had no issues. So I can't see that there'd be any issues on installing on Azure virtual machines. It's a Windows instance. I do all of my testing on Hyper-V guests. I don't have any issues.
Do you have any details on how many people are using FineBuild?
No. I can tell you that there are, since FineBuild was released, there's been almost 37,000 downloads of FineBuild. Not all of those will be people who are using it, but I do know that it is quite widely used. I mean, Brian Davis in the States has joined the FineBuild team because he is a very ardent supporter of FineBuild. If you use SQL Server Central to get advice about SQL Server, it's a fantastic site if you don't using it. That is part of Redgate, and Redgate are sponsoring the best. Each year they do a competition for people to nominate their favourite SQL Server tools, and this year SQL FineBuild is one of the nominated tools. So it is, I would say, it is being used widely enough for a international organisation to think it is worthwhile including it within that type of competition.
Does anyone have anything else before I finish up? No. Okay, Ed, well, that's all of the questions. Thanks a lot for doing the presentation today, and we really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, Cody, you've got my email address. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to field those. But in general, the Codeplex site has got a discussions tab where anybody can start up a new discussion about FineBuild. So if it's something that is potentially of use to a wider audience, then perhaps do it via a discussions tab, but I am quite happy to take an email.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. Many thanks indeed.